Hello, hello, hello. Welcome. Man, I see you all are already here and already jumping. I'm so excited. Thank y'all all for joining us. My name is Tamika Middleton. I am the Chief Political and Strategy Officer here at Women's March. Always so grateful to be in the building with all of you. If you could just drop in the comments wherever you are, whatever platform you're using, tell us your name, tell us where you're joining from, say hi. Um, and yeah, just to let y'all know from the beginning, if you've joined us for these mass calls, you know that we try to protect this space. We try to be really mindful of the vibes inside of the mass calls. So if you are being trollish, if you are spamming the chat, we will remove you. The block hand is very strong, friends. So we invite you to come in with all positivity and all good energy. Shout out to Pennsylvania, California, Missouri, Michigan, Virginia, New York, North Carolina, New Hampshire, Texas. Who else we got? We got Florida, we got New Jersey, New Mexico, Oregon, hi from the Pacific Northwest, Northwest Wisconsin. Oh my gosh, y'all are really joining from all over. Yes, this is recorded. So here's our little tech run through, okay? If you need captions for today's call and you're watching live, please go over to Facebook. Go over to our Facebook page, Women's March on Facebook, and you will be able to have live captions while we're in this call. If you don't need captions, you're welcome to stay joining us over on YouTube or on X. They do not have live captions, unfortunately. So we do encourage you to go ahead and join us over there on Facebook if you need captions. Keep dumping in, keep letting us know where you're joining us from. Shout out to Terry Reedy Lombardo who walked out in Orlando. Thank you. Yes, I'm gonna lift you up on the screen, Terry. Love it. All right. So we have some community norms. We're going to drop our working agreements link into the chat. And so really the big picture here is we want everyone to feel welcome here. We want this to be a space where folks feel like, ooh, that is not what I meant to do. Where folks feel like they are able to learn and grow here, right? So in order to do that, we need folks to be mindful of how they're entering and how they're showing up for each other and with each other in this space. So please operate in good faith here. Please operate with some sense of kindness. If we see folks being disrespectful and out of pocket in the chat, we will absolutely remove you from the chat. We will absolutely remove you from the call. So with that, we will have Q&A. Go ahead. If you have questions as they arrive, go ahead and drop them in the comment section wherever you are. And we will tag them, and we're going to, at the end, answer as many of them as we possibly can. So if you're on Facebook, if you're on YouTube, go ahead and drop your questions in the chat. Again, for folks who are just joining us, my name is Tamika. I'm the Chief Political and Strategy Officer here at Women's March. And we have a jam-packed call for you all today. So what we're going to be up to, I'm going to give a little bit of a grounding around this call. Then I'm going to bring up Rachel, who is our executive director here at Women's March, who's going to talk a bit about what's next from Women's March. Then we're going to have Nady joining us from Mayday Strong and from ICE out of Minnesota. And then after that, we're going to get into a phenomenal training on non-cooperation. Some of you were able to attend in-person trainings in your cities. If you weren't, this is going to be a great opportunity for you to learn about what we mean when we say non-cooperation, what we mean when we say we are going to not comply and not cooperate with what's happening with this regime. So stay tuned for that. It's going to be amazing. And then we'll close out with your questions and your question and answer, and then some links and whatnot for you to be ready and be prepared to take next steps. All right. So I know that was a lot, but we're going to get into it. Okay. So first and foremost, please, somebody said how long? We'll be here until 9 Eastern. So an hour and a half, we'll be here together. Okay. 9 Eastern, 8 Central, 6 Pacific. I'm pretty sure that's how that goes. Um, so if you walked out on Tuesday, please let us know in the chat. If you walked out, let us know where you walked out from. Let us know what you walked out into. We want to know. We are so excited and so grateful for all of you who came together in your communities, who came together in your workplaces. So many students, y'all. And so we're so excited about that. And we want to hear from you where you were walking out from. I see some walked out in Connecticut. We see folks joining us who walked out. Let me see. Walked out in Northern Kentucky, walked out in Chico, California. That's what's up. We had over 900 walkouts. I think the last count was 940 walkouts across the country, an estimated 100,000 people walking out all across the country. Y'all, give yourselves a round of applause. So exciting, so phenomenal, so powerful for you to take that step, take that action. And if you've heard us talking about this walkout, the thing that we want to make clear is we know that one day walkout that we is not the end all be all, right? It is not the strategy. It is the beginning. It is a single day, a promise that we will continue to resist. We will continue to fight back. We will continue to stand up. We will continue to be cogs in the machine. We will take every action that we can to stop what we see happening in our communities and around the country. And so it is really an invitation into this thing called non-cooperation. And so we thank you, all of you who took that action on Tuesday, and we can't wait to continue taking action with you. There are going to be many, many more civil resistance efforts and so many things for you to jump into. And our contribution at Women's March, because of course we are inside of a much larger ecosystem of organizations doing phenomenal work. And if you've been on these mass calls with us over the past year, we've introduced you to so many organizations that we think you should get down with, right? But our contribution to our invitation in this next period is a lovely thing we like to call Brave Women. And so I have the honor and the pleasure to invite to the stage next our illustrious executive director at Women's March, Rachel O'Leary Carmona. So can we bring Rachel up to talk Brave Women?
I saw someone in the chat saying that they walked out in Oklahoma City, so we probably saw each other. I'm still in OKC. I'm happy to talk to everyone today about Brave Women, and really I'm thinking about what this moment calls on us to do, calls on more of us to be brave and have the courage not to comply. And in this moment, I think when we talk about refusal, we have to talk about that as an act of civic imagination, of civic courage, and of bravery, as we call for folks to refuse to hold the line in an authoritarian regime. And so that's why we're really leaning into non-cooperation in the beginning of this year for 2026. And for a lot of folks, it's not really about a tactic. It's not about something that we do one time, but it's tied to our actual survival in our communities. Many of us come from red states. Almost everyone on the call, I think, from the Women's March side. Tamika mentioned that Nady was from Mayday Strong and Organized Power and Action, but also a Women's March board member. So from Team Women's March, we're all in states or have worked in states that have a lot of resistance and in fact are occupied or captured in different ways. And over the next year, we're going to be leaning into providing the skills and knowledge, skill building opportunities, relationship building opportunities to build our capacity to engage in daily acts of non-cooperation, large and small, and to understand how those begin to be attached to our organizing in not just what we're against, but what we're for, what we're building in order to build something that is fundamentally incompatible compatible with fascism and authoritarianism. So we will have a launch in late January for Brave Women. And after that, there will be monthly trainings in various forms of resistance and non-cooperation. And we'll also invite folks to submit their daily acts on a tracker. And, before we talk about this, it won't be, anything that is tracking your specific information, but we're talking about how we anonymously store our stories for everyday resistance so that we can visualize our growing movement of non-cooperation. One of the things that we talk about a lot inside of Women's March is the way that fascism is an attack on our memory, and the way that it tries to strip our books of our history and our museums of our history and our schools of our history. And to paraphrase Lucille Clifton, they keep wanting us to remember their history, and so it's important that we remember our own. And so we will not only lean into our own history, but continue to make it and track it in real time as we map our resistance and make sure that we tell the stories of the acts of bravery that we've done and that we've seen so far this year. And then in this March, we'll continue our annual call for women to take action on International Women's Day. That's something that we've done for a number of years. And this year we are calling for brave women to take action on the 7th, where women will organize in their networks and their communities to conduct large-scale acts of refusal. And we'll be connecting with international groups that are doing similar things and in fact have faced similar authoritarian governments and have beat similar odds. And so we're going to be looking to our international sisters for guidance in this time, and really inviting folks into a new season of bravery as it seems like we've turned a page on the year so far. The first 15 however many days, I said 15 days, but it's really been 22, have gone by in a flash, and it's been rough, and things won't get easier. And what we need to do is get stronger and braver together. And I'm really looking forward to doing that with you for the rest of this year and beyond. Shout out to all the folks who are in the chat. I saw for a second before I had to start paying attention to my stuff about all the places that we walked out. I saw Texas, I saw Oklahoma, I saw some Wisconsin people. I know we were walking out in freezing temperatures and against really tough odds. And especially as there's a surge in a lot of our states. So I just want to say thank you to everybody for all the bravery that you've shown so far. And I'm looking forward to building on that with you in the weeks and months to come. And now we're here. I think I'm going to switch off soon. There we go. Oh, I had one more thing that I was supposed to say. They added some things last minute for me here. Today, some of you may know that the House took a very cowardly vote and voted to continue to fund ICE activities through DHS. And now the Senate needs to make a decision about how they're going to vote. And what we do know from the last couple of weeks and even farther back is that if Congress doesn't stop ICE, the people will. However, we do want Congress to stop ICE. And so we're going to pop a petition in here for everyone to sign to make sure that that the Senate hears from us loud and clear that we need ICE abolished from our streets.
Thank you so much, Rachel. The petition link, I'm dropping that in the chat for y'all right now. So please do visit and sign the petition. And I think that was an amazing segue, so I'm not going to do too much chatting. But next up, our next speaker, of course, like we were saying, we want to keep this momentum up. There's no shortage of opportunity to take action. Like there are so many ways, and there will continue to be ways. We are part of Women's March is a part of a constellation of organizations, right? There is no one organization that can do all of this by itself. And so we want to be always in relationship and in coordination with these organizations. So we're so excited to be in relationship with Mayday Strong and the amazing folks doing the ICE Out actions in Minnesota. So I am going to stop there. And as Rachel already said, Nady is the executive director of Organized Power in Numbers with Mayday Strong, also a member of our amazing board for our Women's March Win, our PAC. So we're super excited to bring Nady to the stage.
It's so beautiful to be here with all of you. I'm like trying to keep up with the chat. Obviously, everyone's turned up. I was really happy to join you all today from my home, and really grounded in just the most recent witnessing of violence that all of us have been witnessing. And I really want to name Liam Conejo Ramos, the 5-year-old that was detained yesterday in Minnesota. And I have 3-year-old twins, and I have to tell you that I've been organizing since I was 14. I've been undocumented myself. I grew up undocumented in this country. I became a US citizen last year and voted for the first time. But watching these last images of our children, our collective children being traumatized, it has literally made me throw up. And I know I'm not the only one. And I see how all of us are showing up as brave women every day for our communities and our collective children. And I want to make sure that, we are remembering that our kids are going to ask us 20 years from now, 10 years from now, when we are elders ourselves, and they're going to ask us, what did you do when that was happening? And I know that all of you here and us will have an answer to our kids, our collective children, whether you decided to have them or not. They are all of ours. And so I thank you. I thank you from the bottom of my heart and our whole family for taking action and standing with families like mine who are still directly impacted and living in fear every day. And I want to remind you that among all of our movement, the labor movement is standing strong as well. We need more unions and more workers standing in solidarity. But what is happening in Minnesota is exactly the inspiration and agitation for all of us to kind of take the baton from what that state is going to do tomorrow. So just really want to say how grateful we are for Minnesota showing us the way, showing us the light in this darkness, and to share with you that we're taking that baton. The Women's March, Mayday Strong, Indivisible, Move On, all of us, we're coming together to say they're leading the way, we're taking the baton, and we know that we got to build from here. So on May 1st of 2026, we're asking people to not go to work, to not go to school, to not shop, and to be with us in the streets. And tomorrow is the first stress test, right? Tomorrow is the day that we both witness what the great people of Minnesota are going to show us, but also stand up with them across the country, across our neighborhoods, and take action both against the Senate, also corporations that are enabling this moment. And so I know, for example, here in Albuquerque, at noon tomorrow, we're all marching to the Target near us, and we're going to demand them that they let us meet with the management. And we're going to deliver a letter that says that they should no longer allow ICE in their property. And so that's one example of the many, many actions that will happen tomorrow. But if you want to join tomorrow for one of those solidarity actions, I know in the chat you'll see that ICE for Good outside that has the map of all the actions across the country. So please check it out. Please join if you can. I know many of us are going to be impacted by the winter storm, but ain't no snow going to stop us from showing up for each other. So thank you. Thank you. Let's keep being brave women together, and let's bring even more brave women along.
Thank you so much, Nady. It is always a pleasure and a joy to have you on all of our calls. Again, you should, if you haven't, go to iceoutforgood.org. That will bring you to the map of all the actions that are happening tomorrow across the country with folks who are standing in solidarity with Minnesota and fighting around ICE. And as Rachel mentioned, especially in the aftermath of this latest vote in the House, it is really a moment for us to take a stand. So please do go there. And also want to re-up what we are about to get into. I'm very excited for. We have Kenzo Mackey and Una Chatterjee who are with Freedom Trainers. And we've been working with Freedom Trainers for some time. And we've done you joined us in the fall, maybe for another non-cooperation training. We had some folks from Freedom Trainers train in multiple cities across the country over the past week. But we're really super excited to really get down in the muck with y'all to talk about non-cooperation and talk about what that means, what it has looked like, and what it can look like for you. Because the invitation here, again, is to take some kind of action every single day. And we saw some folks say, can we do it? Can we walk out on President's Day? Of course you can. Do what moves you. Take some action, right? And then I saw some folks say that their action was canceled due to inclement weather. I just want to flag that there are a couple of actions that were like that over this past week, and some of them have actually been rescheduled to this coming week. So please do take a look at the map, the map at freeamerica.ca, and see if your action, if it got canceled, if it got rescheduled, because there may still be an action coming up near you. Okay. So without further ado, I'm going to bring to the stage Kenzo and Una, who are going to lead us in this phenomenal training. Please feel free to drop your questions in the chat, and we'll be monitoring them. And at the end, we'll try to we'll come back around and answer as many of them as we can.
Hi, everybody. Thank you so much. Thank you, Tamika. It's amazing, as usual, to be here with all of you all around the country. Brave women getting braver with Women's March. And I really want to thank you all for having us again. Freedom Trainers, you can find out more about us at freedomtrainers.net. But we're informally connected national network of trainers. Most of us have come into this through activism and organizing, just like many of you. And I've been organizing at the community, state, and national level for about 30 years. And then all this happened. And I found Freedom Trainers and learned an amazing amount from them, and have really been enjoying learning and sharing in group spaces like this. So I'm very happy to be here. And Kendall, I'm going to pass it to you to introduce yourself and get us started.
Great. Hey, folks. Thank you so much again for having us. It's an honor to be here with you all. Thank you for your courage and bravery in participating in this week's walkouts. Super excited to help deepen the learnings and build our muscle for more mass non-cooperation. So I'm Kendall Mackey. I'm a part of the Freedom Trainers Network. I get to train alongside Una tonight, and I'm a longtime organizer, also a new mama. I've got a 3-year-old and a 1-year-old. And I'm honored to be here, excited to share some of the learnings and some of the tools that have been helping folks across the country figure out how to show up and respond in this moment. Una, can I ask you to go to the next slide, please? Just to quickly jump in with some group agreements. I think these are probably super familiar to y'all, but just honoring the confidentiality and respect of the space. So not taking any photos of folks. A lot of the materials are readily available online. Would happy to follow up and share those out with you all. In the chat, just being mindful, speaking for yourself. All of our contexts are different. Only using the chat for engaging with the workshop. I know Tamika already gave clear instructions or guidelines around community agreements with the chat tonight, but just lifting that up. And then lastly, come open to learning and expect to leave with questions. We don't have all the answers. There will be a good time for some Q&A at the end, and we're excited to really get into it together. Next slide. Thank you. So tonight's goals. We are first and foremost going to examine the threat that we're currently facing, deepen our understanding of how non-cooperation works with stories and examples. We're going to learn 2 tools, the pillars of support and spectrum of allies, and we're going to use those tools to understand how we can do more powerful non-cooperation. And then we're really going to get into it and brainstorm some tactics together and plug into some next steps. The next slide is the agenda. So the flow for tonight, we're going to start with an orientation. We're going to talk about why non-cooperation beats authoritarianism, give y'all some really great examples, do a tactical brainstorm, cover some next steps, and close. Before I jump in, I want to just mention, I know that for some folks on this call, some of this material at the beginning may be familiar. Maybe you were at the trainings last week, or you've come to a Women's March training before. I just want to say that's a good thing. If this material is familiar to you, we want you to really know and have access to these tools. I've been working with this curriculum for a long time, and I'm still finding insights and new learnings. So just want to promise that the training will expand on what you've already learned and deepen the work that you're already doing, and to stick with us if some of it is review for you. And then for some folks on the call, maybe this last Tuesday was the first action you've taken with Women's March. Maybe this is the first training that you're getting on. We're so excited that you're here. We want to make sure you're oriented to this work and grounded in shared understanding. We're all in this together, and we want to meet everyone where they're at. We are so, so grateful and excited that each and every one of you are here. So I am going to jump in with a really big step back and some basic definitions just to really ground us in the work. So what is authoritarianism? I feel like we know it, we see it, we're experiencing it, but just to get super clear with the definitions, first and foremost, a misuse of power, a slow and quiet advance. It's a system, not just a person, right? It's not just Trump. There's a whole system behind him that's making this possible. And here in the US, authoritarianism has long roots that have a deep history grounded in racism and white supremacy. So this is not new. We've seen this in different iterations before, but this is what we're talking about when we're talking about authoritarianism. Next slide, please. Next up, this is their playbook. So we know how authoritarians operate. We've seen them do the same things repeatedly in different places all over the globe. These are some of the core ways that they break down institutions to grab more power for themselves. So direct investigations against critics. Just this month, they've opened a new investigation of the Federal Reserve Chair, Jerome Powell. Powell responded basically saying this is because he believes this is because the president wants him to set interest rates based on the preferences of the president and not their assessment of what will serve the public. Another part of their playbook is giving license to law breaking. We've seen this with Trump pardoning the insurrectionists from January 6th. Regulatory retaliation. Quick example of this, defunding NPR and PBS, deploying military domestically, seeing National Guard as an everyday presence in our streets, federal law enforcement overreach, the flood of thousands of ICE agents into our cities. I'm joining tonight from Portland, Maine, where we're experiencing a huge ICE raid across many of our cities here. And we're seeing this all over the country. And then lastly, the threat of the autocrat not leaving, or the autocrat won't leave. And we know that Trump has repeatedly flirted with staying in office beyond a second term, and that this is something that his team has been seeding and planting, that they believe he should be able to continue to be in office past this next term. So we already know, we can see what they're doing for what it is. This is what authoritarians do all over the world. This is their playbook. And we also know what to expect from authoritarians. Next slide, please, Una. We know to expect that they're going to stoke fear and chaos to keep us off balance. They're going to make threats to get people to obey in advance, and they will weaponize fear of subgroups to keep us divided and apart. And I know many of us are feeling this, experiencing this every day. So before moving in to the next section, we just want to take a beat and reflect together in the chat. How have you seen some of this happening around you? How is this impacting you? What are some of the things that you're experiencing in your own community?
So we're seeing folks jump into the chat. Never Obey in Advance says, weirdly Meg 955. A lot of folks are talking about seeing ICE show up in their cities for the first time. People are predicting that even if he tries, he's not going to be able to stay in office for much longer. That was from Even Energy. So I don't know if others have things that they want to share about what you've seen. Have you seen some of these things, these predictable behaviors? Fear of leaving home. People of color, someone says, I'm Native and Hispanic, so this treatment is not new to me. People of color have suffered this type of treatment for decades. Definitely the history of racism and structural racism and misogyny in this country and racial capitalism has all contributed. It's the fertile ground within which authoritarianism can grow. I think we can agree on that. Weaponization of false cultural narratives, for example, around Somali and Haitian communities. All right, so we can keep, and fear. One person says, my friends are afraid to talk about how they really feel because they're afraid that others may report them. So the way our local governments have secretly made 287G agreements. Thank you, Melissa Baxter. So I think folks have seen these expected behaviors. These are predictable. They've happened in the past and they're happening again. I'm going to move us on. So we're going to move into this section about how change happens. And I guess we know from what we've just discussed that authoritarians are predictable. They sort of have a playbook and they do things similarly. Some of these things have track records of really working on populations. Like you can gain compliance, you can gain obedience in advance, you can gain control and power. So they do things similarly. Because it's happened again and again, our side, our team, the brave women and all our friends, we've gotten smarter. We've observed what's been happening. And there are some core concepts that folks who have studied resistance to authoritarianism and people who have actually put their efforts into overthrowing authoritarian regime, there's some core concepts we can draw from reflecting on some of their work. So we're going to share a little bit of that with you. These are pretty foundational concepts, so we'll have a baseline here. Remember, what you're doing is taking all this in because before this call ends, this is going to turn into an imagination and invention lab. We're going to need all your ideas about how to effectively non-cooperate. So just grab this stuff and start thinking about your communities, your networks, your power. And I'll move into the next slide. So what this slide is the documentation of several scholars who did kind of a deep analysis of 35 cases of efforts to stop dismantling of democracy, what is often called democratic backsliding or the beginning of a slide into fascism or authoritarianism. So these scholars analyzed 35 cases over about 30 years where people, former democracies experienced authoritarian backsliding or democratic backsliding. And what they were trying to do is figure out how U-turns are accomplished, like how people could turn it around. And the point made here is pretty stark. You need a resistance movement to turn it around. If you don't have a resistance movement, a broad-based civil resistance movement that engages a lot of people, and we're talking specifically about one that engages people at a mass level in nonviolence, with nonviolent resistance. If you don't have that, you're not going to make the U-turn back into democracy. And there's a really interesting, for the union members here, I don't know if we have any nurses on this call, but talk about brave women. Those nurses are out in New York City. It's the biggest nurses strike in New York City history. But folks in labor, you need to pay attention to this, because approximately 83% of movements with national trade union participation succeeded in securing the U-turn. Only 29% of movements without. So this actually is like, it's amazing that we had Nady from Open come and talk about a partnership with Women's March. We're doing Ice Out for Good, and we're building towards May Day. And there's a May Day Strong Coalition that Women's March is a part of, and a lot of our organizations are a part of. So keep May Day in mind as a big flashpoint on the calendar, because we're going to partner with labor and be out in the streets. As you're thinking about building and escalating non-cooperation locally, how are you going to turn your neighbors out for May Day? And if you haven't heard about your union supporting, that might be an amazing way for you to weigh in with your advocacy. So now let's just quickly look at what scale is needed. And the very simple answer is much more than we have now, but it doesn't really have to be anywhere close to everyone. So this number, 3.5%, it's when 3.5% of the population engages in a resistance movement, people can stop an authoritarian regime. This is research from a scholar named Erica Chenoweth. So we don't by any means need everyone. So if you get frustrated because people are not walking out with you, just remember, it doesn't take everyone. But if we could get 3.5% of us really engaged, history indicates that's a very good start. Now, every situation is different. We are in the belly of the beast regarding extreme militarization, extreme consolidation of capital in this country. So let's set our bar even higher. Don't like go in a room of 100 people, come out with 3.5 new friends and think you're done. Keep trying. We might need more than 3.5%, but really Chenoweth did a ton of research into this, and there's a lot indicating that if we can get just a significant number, but not everybody on our side, we can make massive change. So keep that in mind too. Right now, our biggest rallies are getting closer to 2%. So we have moments when we can activate almost 2% of the population, or we've had that. So we've got to keep pushing. All of us really have to be organizers. We need to be pulling more people in.
Yes. Thank you so much, Una. I think that is really where this all starts. Like, it all starts recognizing that we're only going to do this by doing it together and by building to scale, by bringing more and more people in. So all of this starts with being with other people. And if you don't already, it's high time you have a crew you move with, whether that's your friends, your neighbors, your coworkers, folks in the place of worship, identifying kind of who you can move with and then trying to build that. So I want to introduce this tool that kind of helps us think about power differently than I think what we're traditionally conditioned to think about power. So this visual is kind of where we're going to start, and then we'll get into the tool, the pillars of support. So traditionally, we think of power as kind of like a triangle where the power is concentrated at the top by a few, and they dictate what happens to the rest of us at the bottom, right? You think of CEOs to workers, you think of principals to students or teachers, the president, everybody else. That's kind of how we've been conditioned to think about power. And there's a reason for that. If you think about power that way, that you as an individual or as a citizen or person who cares, you feel powerless. And it's designed to be that way. That's how the folks that are at the top of this triangle want you to think that the world operates. But power holders can't get what they want alone. They need other people and institutions to support them. Otherwise, their power becomes shaky, like an upside down pyramid. And that's the image on the right side of the screen here, an upside down triangle. This is known as like the consent view of power, theory of power, or the upside down triangle. And basically, once you understand that power is actually propped up by specific institutions, organizations, then you can understand how much more fragile or shaky it is. And that in order for those ruling to really continue to dictate what happens, they need everybody to continue to comply with what they're demanding. So if we go to the next slide, we'll get into what some of these pillars look like. But first, oh, sorry, thank you. First, just want to read this quote. This is a political theorist, Sharp, who has done incredible work on nonviolence. And I'm just going to read this quote aloud. By themselves, rulers cannot collect taxes, enforce repressive laws and regulations, keep trains running on time, prepare national budgets, direct traffic, manage ports, print money, repair roads, keep markets supplied with food, make steel, build rockets, train the police and army, issue postage stamps, or even milk a cow. People provide these services to the ruler through a variety of organizations and institutions. If people would stop providing these skills, the ruler could not rule. This is the heartbeat of the pillars of support. This is the heartbeat of nonviolent action. This is at the core of why our power is in each other, in building people power. And we do that by really digging into the pillars of support. So let's go to the next slide, please. Thank you. So these are just an example of some of the pillars. There are many that are not listed here. If you are thinking of some and you want to drop them in the chat, please do. But here's an example of some of the pillars that are propping up any rule or any regime, right? There are businesses. Oftentimes, like big multinational corporations are okay with trying to figure out how to work under a regime. They're kind of geared, they're willing to comply and figure out how to work together. Labor, that's another big institution that provides a lot of services and makes a lot of things run. So that is like a huge institution that continues to prop up the system. Faith, education, civil service, military and police. Again, if you think of other pillars, you want to drop them in the chat, please add them. This is just an example of a few of them, but knowing what they are and then seeing what pillar we are a part of or a pillar that we can influence, this can help us stay focused amidst the fear and chaos that authoritarians need and thrive on, so that we can continue to build the people power we need to withdraw support from the regime and making it impossible for them to function. So if people remove their support from these pillars, that's non-cooperation. Just a quick story, a quick anecdote. I'm sure many folks are familiar with this, but early on in Trump's second term, Elon Musk at Doge demanded that all federal workers send in 5 lines to describe what they've done each week, and initially reported that if they didn't, they'd be fired. And when the OMB, which is the agency that communicated this directive, sent out this information or this request, they actually didn't include the part that workers would be fired if they didn't comply. So already this order from Elon Musk was coming, and folks were already within their own position of government, not fully complying with this order. And once this directive went out, federal workers started doing what we do. They started signal chats with their friends, with the other folks that they know. that were getting these same directives, and they started organizing and not cooperating with this demand. So a few folks did creative things, like they responded with a list of 5 things that were, quote, confidential, so their list was redacted. But more and more folks just decided, we're not going to respond to this. Very quickly, the unions that represent federal workers backed this up, told workers they didn't need to comply. And then after enough folks had stopped complying with this, then the news started covering that folks like cabinet members were saying, folks don't have to do this. And so the story was, that other folks high up in the presidency were disagreeing with Musk, so people didn't need to do this. But in reality, folks were saying that because they had already, federal workers were already not complying with this. So they were trying to kind of get back the power that was clearly not being ceded to them. And, in total, I think over 1.6 million employees participated in this mass non-cooperation, one of the biggest demonstrations of mass non-cooperation we've seen thus far. And this is, a really good example of how non-cooperation is something we really have baked into our DNA. Like, we can sense, we have an instinct for when there is a power grab or an overuse of power and abuse of power. And our reaction or response to that is to resist and to check that power. And so I think this is an instinct that we can hone and a muscle we need to build together. And pillars of support can really help us dig in and figure out, okay, where do I want to focus building this non-cooperation muscle? Which pillar do I have the most influence over? Which pillar am I already a part of? So let's dig in a little bit deeper on kind of the layers within each pillar, right? Because if you look at the cross-section of a pillar, what do we see? Is everybody in a pillar the same? No, not all pillars have the same power position in upholding a system, nor the same disruption potential. So, like I said before, you think about businesses, there's the CEOs, the managers, the workers, the consumers. In education, there's the principals, the teachers, the students, and then the image here pulls out within the military, there's the generals, the officers, the soldiers. So within each pillar, there are levels or layers to the different groups that hold different power. And all of them are important in terms of trying to get this pillar, like shaking this pillar so that it no longer props up the regime. I want to tell a little story or get into a little bit of a case study that I think is a helpful, helps to really clarify or pull out what it looks like to focus, to use this tool and really focus on targeting a pillar. So this example is of Otpor, which is a resistance movement in Serbia. And this is a story of how this resistance movement identified how they could move the military. So in Serbia, they had a repressive government under Milosevic, and this small group of activists formed called Otpor in 1998. And I'll fast forward to the end of the story, which is that at the end of the story is that Milosevic was holding an election, and Otpor brought international observers. And so, as a lot of authoritarians do, they hold these kind of prop up elections. And so even though he had lost and the international observers announced that he had lost, Otpor announced that the election had been stolen, Milosevic wasn't going to accept the election results. And this group was ready to act to implement the will of the people and kick Milosevic out. So the protesters were facing off with police and military who were surrounding the Capitol building. Hundreds of thousands of people came to participate in this, which is really big. Serbia is not that big of a country. So hundreds of thousands of people came to kick Milosevic out of office. And the military and police were given orders to shoot into the crowd, and they didn't do it. They let the crowd in and they joined the will of the people. So let's backtrack. Why did they do this? OPPOR started as a small group, and they did a lot of protests where they were regularly beaten by the police and sometimes military. And despite this violence that they experienced, they decided to have a day of solidarity with police. So they would do regular actions where they handed out flowers and leaflets, T-shirts, encouraging police officers to defect. They would organize these protests like over and over again, and they would say to these police, you know, you're going to get a chance to join us too. When the time comes, you're going to be able to join us. They saw into the future, and they knew that they needed this pillar to join them if they were going to take down the dictator. And so on national days of mourning, where police and military would honor those that had fallen, OPPOR activists would join and read the names of police that had died, and they'd also include the people that were part of their resistance movement that had died when reading those names. So if you're not in the military or not in the police, this is an example of like you can still target and influence a pillar so they too can reject and defect from a regime. And when they were even smaller, so before they were able to get big numbers to show up to actions, they would do symbolic like street theater. That was one of the big ways that they got started. And they would do actions where they would set up like a jail cell in the street and show people being imprisoned for their beliefs. So they demonstrate the symbolic nature of what their dictator was doing. And in every moment, they were prefiguratively thinking about who are we trying to target and what groups are we trying to pull away from the dictator. And there are three things that you really need in order to do that. You need unity, planning, and nonviolent discipline. So one of the ways to think about it is, what can I do? Or like three points that I want to land about like why this story helps us think about how we're choosing targets, pillars, how we're engaging, where we're at as individuals. When you're thinking about like, what can I do? One, who are the people I can act with? Two, what are the pillars of support that I can put energy towards and move? And three, devoting yourself to some long-term project, building that big we. And a way that we can think about or plan in creating that space and welcoming in that big we is through an additional tool called the spectrum of allies. So we've identified the pillar that we want to operate in, organizing with folks that we know can help shake that pillar. And then the next step in that is then mapping out who else can we get to join us. So like Una was saying, we know we need to build to scale. We know we need millions of people participating in consistent, persistent, mass non-cooperation. How do we get there? We get there by everybody becoming an organizer, everybody bringing new people in to this work, into this fight. And so this tool helps us kind of both map out how can we bring more people along, and how can we also isolate those that are actively against us, that are never going to join us. How do we make sure their camp gets smaller and smaller as our camp gets bigger and bigger? Una, I'm going to pass it over to you to dig into that.
Thank you, Kendall. I saw in the chat, folks are asking where you can find this content online to reproduce it or even make posters. You're welcome to go to freedomtrainers.net and look at the resources there and share them widely. They're for you and the movement. I have an example to share. Some of us who have been doing organizing to protect K through 12 public education for decades have kind of come together and tried to figure out how we should be organizing in this moment. So we started an effort called freethefuture.net, which is partnered with Women's March. And basically, we're supporting folks across the country. You're welcome to join. Please do, if you care about K through 12 public education. We're connecting folks across the country and helping people to build little local circles. And we want to start shaking the pillar of K through 12 public education. So we're going to work together to get district superintendents, school board members, state elected officials, secretaries of education, and others to take public action. Basically, we're going to have a public statement condemning the chaos that is being wreaked on our kids in our schools by the kind of federal dismantling of the Department of Education. So, and other moves at the federal level. So we're going to push our superintendents to basically publicly withdraw their support from what is happening at the federal level around education policy. This is an example how we're trying to take the pillar strategy and apply it in a campaign. So you can look, Kendall showed you earlier a cross section of a pillar, and you can look like this is sort of how we're envisioning the K through 12 education pillar. Something as big as the education system is obviously more complex than what is drawn in this little cross section. But what do you notice about the pillars, like the folks in the middle versus the folks on the outside? Is there anyone who can drop in the chat something you notice comparing the groups that are named on these in these sections of this pillar? I can't tell. I might have a lag, so it might be that some of you are answering and I can't I can't see it yet. There are fewer people as you get closer to the center, so there's way more of us on the outside. And then the other thing is that the people in the center generally have more decision-making power. So I sort of think of it as like when you are in this circle in gym class when you're little and you have the edges of the parachute and you just pull up on the parachute, like all of us on the outside need to like make that motion and then we can shake it. And basically, if everybody in every pillar on the outside of the pillar starts doing that, or several of them, we could knock the top off of this thing. That's the point of the understanding the pillar strategy. And so the way that you shake a pillar, Kendall covered this, but if you think about this sort of from the example that I just shared with you, we know that we have connections with other school families, with our teachers, with our principals, and we can encourage them and our school boards to, and even the staff at our superintendent's office, to have the conversations needed to get the superintendents to sit down with us, and eventually state secretaries of education, elected members of state education committees, and we can grow the list. Some of them will be active opponents. There are definitely people occupying especially elected roles who want to privatize our schools and have an agenda to have no kids in public schools that they've stated explicitly. They believe in that. So we're not going to convince all of them, but by convincing all of the other people, we can kind of pull many of them over to our side, and then the ones that are left on that side will be a much smaller group and way more isolated. So I think now I'm gonna turn it back to you, Kendall, and we're gonna move into sort of like really what is non-cooperation. Take it away.
Great. Yeah, this is definitely getting to like our creative, like collective creative ideas, and really getting to a place of like, okay, how are we going to do this? What are we going to do next? So I'm going to cover some like basic overview of non-cooperation, give some examples, and then we're going to like really jump in and start doing our tactical brainstorm, which is kind of really the heart of the training tonight. So really excited to dig in on this section. Just really quick, basic definition. What is non-cooperation? Una, if you wouldn't mind going to the next slide for me, please. Thank you. to undermine the authority of an unjust system by disrupting it, refusing to cooperate with it, or otherwise making it harder or impossible for the system to keep its unfair policy. And we've started to think about non-cooperation within kind of 3 buckets. The first being social non-cooperation. This is doing something publicly that says no to the authoritarian regime and gets lots of people to do it too. So I think a huge example of this right now is the whistles in Minneapolis, folks showing up en masse as a way to call attention to and disrupt the abductions that are happening by ICE, and it's drawing in massive amounts of people. It's a very clear action that people are taking to socially non-cooperate, to say, we see you doing this. This is not okay. We're calling attention to this. We're going to drive you out of our neighborhood. We're going to try to protect as many of our neighbors as possible. This is a great example that we're seeing every day on the streets of social non-cooperation. Other things like ICE Watch, the walkouts that y'all did earlier this week, rallies, these are all ways that we're doing something publicly and saying no to the authoritarian regime. So that's social non-cooperation. The next one is visionary non-cooperation. This is the way we are taking care of each other and not cooperating at the same time. This is where the mutual aid effort really comes in as like the alternative, how we're participating in non-cooperation by building the alternatives that we need to care for each other and provide each other with safety, dignity, our needs. Like I said at the top of the call, I'm joining tonight from Portland, Maine. We're seeing a huge influx of ICE on our streets, and the amount of organizing. We've been learning so much from organizers in cities like Minneapolis, Chicago, who have been, at this for a long time now and have helped develop the infrastructure. And a part of that is, what do we do? How can we care for our neighbors who are afraid to leave their homes? So in Portland, we've got a massive operation for meal deliveries that are up and running, where we're able to help people stay inside, stay safe. And that is an example of visionary non-cooperation. What are the alternative systems that we're building to care for each other, and continue to say no to the regime? The last one is probably the one that folks are most familiar with, coming to a call about non-cooperation. If you've never gone through a training like this before, economic non-cooperation is kind of the thing that I think most people have familiarity with. These are things like boycotts and strikes. Most recently, want to call out the huge win with Spotify. This was late last year, calling out Spotify for having ICE ads. As of this year, they're no longer running those ads because of the public support being withdrawn from them. And then Una mentioned this earlier, but the New York nurses going on strike. This is a massive demonstration of non-cooperation. I think the governor issued like a state of emergency as soon as they announced that they were going to be going on strike. And so really understanding the power of our wallets, the power of our labor, and how we can be pulling out our money and resources from institutions, organizations that are continuing to prop up the regime. So those are kind of the 3 camps. Just to quickly review them again, we've got social non-cooperation, raising awareness publicly, creating pressure on those doing wrong; visionary non-cooperation, doing mutual aid, the alternative institutions, visioning a better society; and then economic cooperation, removing money from enablers, boycotts, strikes, walkouts.
Thank you, Kendall. So we're going to quickly head towards a brainstorming activity where we're going to ask you all to start thinking about some tactics that you can use or that others on the call can use for non-cooperation. And we can start small. One thing to remember is we can start small and we can find ways to grow. And there's sort of 2 pathways that we can think about growing our non-cooperation. So the first one is who. We can think about individuals like me by myself and my like closest friends. That little group, like, what can we do to non-cooperate? Then we can think about bigger collectives that we're a part of and that we can organize and pull together. And then we can think about institutions that we're a part of and speaking on behalf of institutions. So that's the who part. And then the how part is, like, how can we non-cooperate? And obviously there are more direct opportunities to non-cooperate. And there are ones where we can use our voices. And it's not like cheating. If you can only think about how to use your voice at first, that is not cheating. That is still very brave. So you can think about that on an escalating arc too. Like, what can I say? How can I speak out? Then the actions that I can take. How can I demonstrate my non-compliance with what is going on? And then really, how can I block it, stop it, stand in its way? So those are the opportunities for non-cooperation, kind of on an escalating arc. And we can kind of go into a little more detail about them in the next slide. We'll do 3 slides like this, just talking about how you can escalate. So one, I wonder if folks remember Episcopal Bishop Marianne Booty, who did the service, I think it was the day right after the inauguration. And she just played her role in such an extraordinary way. She did the unexpected. She said things directly to the president that people were taken by surprise that she was brave enough to do that, and she was direct enough. And a lot of people felt she was speaking for them. So played her role with her voice in a totally unexpected way. And then, smaller examples, like maybe an individual lawyer offers a training about non-cooperation in their home country and how it was used by members of the legal profession. Or maybe you can do this training for people in your community, for some of your neighbors. And it helps people sort of see themselves in growing the resistance movement. And then collective, Harvard alumni, including very prominent alumni, including conservative alumni who were very aligned with the Republican Party in different instances, and a lot of non-conservatives, but certainly some prominently featured conservatives signing a public statement rejecting accommodating federal mandates under this regime. That was a collective effort. People organized that. And then sometimes you can, within an institution that is important in a particular sector, if you get enough people in that institution to do something, it can matter, even if what you're doing is just speaking your views. So the National Institutes of Health had hundreds of scientists who are federal employees issue something that they called the Bethesda Declaration, which was last year sort of condemned some of the moves of the administration, declared them harmful to the health of the Americans, health of Americans, hostile to science. So that was an example of on behalf of an institution. Let's talk about acting. I don't know if folks remember early in the administration, 2 Washington Post columnists quit. They left their positions because the newspaper was not letting them report the things that they thought were critical to report. And they called out their employer, and they did it very publicly. And then they were immediately hired by another prominent publication. So, and then as small groups, there's an organizing effort called Vet the Vote. So folks who have sort of military training, security training, were organized to protect the vote. To counter threats from places where people felt like voters would be threatened by sometimes armed opposition. And then on behalf of institutions, even though they were acting in their self-interest because Tesla stock was plummeting, Tesla investors ended up voicing a view of Tesla that and asking Elon Musk to leave Doge. So the richest dude in the world listened to his investors and left that position to return to Tesla. And then let's go into the kind of the highest bar, standing in the way, non-cooperation. I think Kendall touched on this one, touched on actions by federal workers, certainly, but individual federal workers, oftentimes we are not even seeing this, but if you have friends in the federal government, or you might hear some of this leak, like people are doing things more slowly, they're doing things more casually, they're forgetting to do things in ways that make it like really slow down the implementation of harmful federal policy and contribute to protecting us. And then we've seen this in Minnesota. I think we're about to see it in Kendall City, in Portland, in Los Angeles, where ICE is being boarded in hotels. People say no sleep for ICE and make noise outside. Sometimes I've heard in Minnesota that they've actually successfully gotten ICE officers fed up, and they've left. So they've disrupted their efforts to rent cars, or gotten between them and offices that they had to report to. And that wasn't necessarily large groups. And then on behalf of institutions, Kendall shared about the 5-line memo that Musk wrote and the scale of the rejection, the refusal to comply with that. And there are certainly other examples, like California school districts refusing to eliminate DEI curriculum, and Harvard telling the federal government to, I don't know, I'm about to say a bad word. I'm not going to say telling the federal government to that they wouldn't listen to their mandates. So those are some of the, like, some examples. So think about these and think about some of the upcoming slides as we move you into starting to envision how you will non-cooperate. One thing, I'm going to set the bar real high here. So just so that we have like a goal, because if you want to win the game, you got to know where the goal is. So this is where we want to get. This is mass non-cooperation, and what it looks like is millions who previously bought products all agree to boycott a single company. Millions call out sick on the same day. Hundreds of thousands refuse to go to school or to work. I mentioned May Day earlier. We can all kind of do this together. The movement is aligning in very hopeful ways. So that's something to keep in mind. As we go into our sort of close to final section here, I just want to lift up something. The Women's March really wants you all to use your hearts and minds and contribute to ideas about making, leaning into no, making non-cooperation really spread. And so your ideas, you'll share them in the chat tonight, and there'll be other opportunities to share them. We'll come into Women's March spaces and others might learn about them. And then you can use Women's March spaces to align around things that you all can do together, like some of the best ideas. So that's like how this is going to work. I know that a lot of these mass calls, honestly, it's a very foreign experience for Kendall and I as trainers to be just talking and not doing activities and not having a lot of dialogue. But because these calls get really big, because there's so many of you, it's like impractical to do a lot of interaction. But that doesn't mean that the interaction that's critical to movement it has to happen. And so just imagine your ideas are central here, and we're going to move into the next section. So Kendall, I think I'm turning it over to you here.
Yes. So we're going to brainstorm some tactics. Here's a big list of tactics. I'm curious, has anyone done any of these? If you could see the list, and if you have done them, drop some examples in the chat. I'm going to just read off a few, but would love to hear things that you've already participated in. So some of the things on this list, refusal to accept appointed officials or sit-ins, mock elections, paint as protest, parades, general strike, mock funerals, teach-ins, walkouts, social boycotts. All of these are tactics that fall within this non-cooperation strategy. What are some other actions that folks have participated in, either on this list or not on this list, that you want to tell us in the chat? What are folks seeing? I'm actually having a hard time seeing the chat, Una. Singing. See someone wrote singing, exclamation point.
Speaking out. Someone is sewing or knitting a heart for everybody who's been abducted by ICE, which is taking them a long time.
Wow.
Somebody's singing stuff specifically about Kristi Noem. Boycotting businesses that support ICE. There's a lot of poetry is another one. Register voters. There's a lot of requests for like which businesses should we be boycotting. So I wonder if I know Women's March is in partnership with a lot of organizations that are actually standing up and calling for boycotts. The organizers in Minnesota have done that. So I wonder if that's a good follow-up to the call to share some of that. Created art and supported friends who are 3D printing anti-ice whistles. Somebody's doing witchcraft. I like that. Producing an episode on women's rights. Getting more churches to organize against ICE. Signs in your front yard. Weekly organized protests. In Minnesota, there's protests at Home Depot. People tie up the line by returning, I think it's ice scrapers. It's moving very fast. Assuming that you can ride a pedal unicycle, ride around carrying a 20 by 40 inch protest sign. I did this once and ended up on page 1 of the local paper. Put our messages on our cars, wear them as slogans on our clothing. There's a lot of ideas here.
Great. Thank you all so much. And thank you, Una, for reading some of the ones in the chat. Yeah, so many great ideas, so many things that people are already doing, have already done. We want to take a few minutes to really apply what we've been learning. So taking a second to remember everything we've covered. We have to grow our muscle for action, our muscle for saying no, and we have to grow our scale and our size. So with that in mind, and thinking about the tactics we've reviewed in this training, how would you respond to this prompt? Minneapolis organizers and activists have called for people across the country to stand in solidarity with what's happening there. What can you do locally? How can you participate in non-cooperation locally to express solidarity? And before folks jump in the chat, unless want to just hold and ask that people just take a minute before putting their ideas into the chat, just to really think about this. So if we can collectively, I heard someone say in a training once, in order to participate in mass non-cooperation, it requires a lot of cooperation amongst ourselves. So maybe this will be a good practice. If we could collectively cooperate in pausing the chat for 1 minute while folks think about this prompt and what tactic they could participate in. So we'll just hold for 1 minute and then would love to hear what folks are thinking. Okay, y'all, what ideas I see some folks putting stuff in the chat. What are some non-cooperation tactics? I'm seeing paint as protest, rally my coworkers to wear colors representing equality and write petitions and letters. Mockery, mutual aid. Come out tomorrow for truth and freedom, calling Congress every day.
Snail mail. Snail mail as non-cooperation. I like that. Mass snail mail to senators and other decision makers.
Amazing. Armband, yard signs. Great. I'm seeing a lot of folks. I'm actually having a hard time keeping up with the chat because a lot of folks are participating. Thank you all so much. Continue to be thinking about like actions that you can take in small groups as we start to build this muscle, actions you can take with larger groups that you're a part of. And I think just remembering that, you know, in order to grow, in order to do this, we all have to become organizers. We all have to be bringing more people in and building this collective muscle, experimenting, bringing our creativity, our innovation, and our commitment and our courage to non-cooperation in any way that we can in order to, you know, really push back on this authoritarian power grab that we're experiencing right now. So want to move to what's next and what you can do after this training, which I think is passing it.
Yeah, I think we're going to pass it back to Tamika.
Yes, thank you.
We're going to all come to the stage for this last little bit. So before we get there to what's next, I do want to, we have a few questions, and I want to make sure that we can touch a couple of them, not a lot of them. But some of them I can hit really quickly. Yes, if you didn't see the ticker on the bottom, this is recorded. If you weren't able to watch it live, you can catch it on our YouTube and on our Facebook pages once this is done. So please do go to the YouTube if you haven't. If you had to step out, if you have friends that you want to see, you want them to catch it, you can also go there. If you're looking for actions that are happening for tomorrow, the site that you can go to is iceoutforgood.org. That is a site to find an action near you happening tomorrow with the Ice Out in solidarity, Lord, with Minnesota. If you are looking broadly for things to get into, you can always go to the Women's March site. There are a few actions still happening on the Free America site in places that they had to get postponed. So I just hit those really quickly because I saw those questions come up a few times. And then also people wanted to find out more about getting on the ground trainings like this and getting more access to these resources, freedomtrainers.net. So there's a lot of links. But if you register for the call, you will get a follow-up email with these links in your inbox. All right. Now, what I want to, can you all, one of the questions was, can you all go through, name the pillars again, one more time. Can you all name the 5 pillars?
So I can, do you want me to put the slide up or do you want to?
Sure.
I feel like, okay, so here's the thing. The idea of there being 5 pillars is not right. Those are 5 examples. And sometimes we all try to like find ourselves in a pillar, but the truth is you're in a pillar. If you work somewhere, if you shop somewhere, if you get healthcare, if you deliver care to other people, you're in a sector that has a whole infrastructure, and that sector is being impacted by federal policy, and you can shake it. So it's not so much that there's 5 pillars and you have to worry about which one you're in. It's like you're in one. Figure out the one you're in. It could be truck drivers. You know what I mean? It could be artists and the arts industry. And maybe you're not like in Hollywood, maybe you're in a different kind of a different place in the arts industry, but you could still have impact.
Thank you, Una. There was another question for you all. There was some confusion when there was one slide that of course you were talking about the 3.5% that comes from Erica Channel with Maria Stefan, but you also mentioned in another slide a bit about 57%, and there was some confusion about what that meant, what the distinction was there. So could you all just clarify that?
You want to take that one, Kendall? The 3.5 and the 51.7.
Yeah, so it was basically the breakdown was, and I don't have the slide in front of me, but I remember it. The breakdown is basically looking at a bunch of different case studies. We know that if you don't, you have like a 51% chance of succeeding, of like creating a U-turn to democratic backsliding if you have a resistance movement that's to scale. And so if you don't have a resistance movement and there's an authoritarian takeover, a regime takeover, a dictator that comes in, you have a very slim chance. I can't remember the exact percentage in that slide, but it's way less. And if you do have a resistance movement, an active resistance movement, that's where you get that, like, we still can turn this around 51%. And so when we're talking about what a resistance movement looks like in terms of scale, that's where that 3.5% number comes in. So when we're saying we can still turn this around by building this resistance movement, in order to get that to the scale that we've seen work, that's that 3.5% number. Does that clarify?
Yes, thank you so much, Kenzo. So 3.5% is the percent of the population we need to hit that, excuse me, theoretically, to hit that turning point where we have a 51% chance of making a U-turn. So two numbers, I know all the percentages. You know, if you're not, we talk about being data, our few data nerds on the team. Not all of us are data nerds, but that's what, I hope that landed for folks. The last question I want to lift up from the chat, because I want to make sure that I get folks out here on time, is a question. I'm going to bring Rachel in because we get this question, we hear this question, especially when we talked about walkouts, this question around a general strike. How do we build towards a general strike? And so, Rachel, I wanted to pull you in to talk to this question.
I mean, there are a lot of ways that we build towards a general strike, that movements have built towards general strikes. Let's put it that way. And the ways that we might do that in this country, specifically in 2026, actually have to be developed and tested. And so I think the first thing that happens is that we build the capacity, including the patience and the resourcefulness for conducting stress tests. One of the stress tests that we were happy that was successful was our own walkout. Friday, tomorrow, I keep saying Friday like it's not tomorrow. Friday is another one where an entire state is calling for an economic blackout. And so I think it's important for us to recognize the steps could be different when we're thinking about what a stress test look like and the ways that we get there. But what is important is that we can't make it to a general strike unless we figure out how to make refusal two things. One, an act of, civic activity. So, rather than thinking about participating and kind of turning some of those ideas on our heads about the ways that, what refusal is and what engaging in a civic process is and in civic discourse and civic engagement. And then the second piece is that we have to make sure that resistance and refusal is sustainable, that it doesn't wreck lives, that it doesn't wreck communities. And so that means building up the resources, both in terms of know-how and also just the material conditions where the cost of refusal is not greater than the cost of going along with the authoritarians, agenda. And so when it gets to a point where the folks who are providing resources and support in your communities are outside of the authoritarian government, then it actually creates the environment where it actually costs more to not be a part of the resistance, as it were. So all of that said is that I'm talking about conditions a lot more than steps. And I think that I would argue that the folks that are saying, well, here are the, however many steps that it's going to take, and this is what it's going to look like, we're figuring that out still. The things that have happened have not happened in the United States. They have not happened in 2026. They have not happened in these conditions. And so we're all kind of creating the tolerance for some uncertainty and some disequilibrium along the road. And I would argue that this week has been a big week in kind of testing those conditions and learning more. And we are actually... as part of our walkout, we worked with American University, and we'll be excited to share some of that data out with the base so that we can see exactly what we're learning and what is the impact of practicing non-cooperation on non-cooperation. I mean, I'm a person who practices, I practice a musical instrument, I practice lifting weights at the gym, and I know that you get stronger and you get better the more that you do it. And so we're interested in actually seeing the data set that tells us that. So more to come on that. I think after this week, we as a movement will know more after this week, but I will say that the conditions have to, be right so that the cost is not too great for folks to bear.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Rachel. Thank you, Una. Thank you, Kendall. I'm going to close us out by answering a couple of these questions that are in here really quickly. Again, and reiterating some things. We heard some folks say, what do we do? How do we connect with each other? How do we organize together in these circumstances on these platforms that censor us, like Facebook, like Instagram? And we want to invite y'all. If you had not heard, spread the word. Women's March has an app. It is a social networking space. I think Sarah has dropped the link in the chat. We invite you all, if you go on in your app store on whatever device you have and search Women's March Community, you will find it. We invite y'all to come join us, to come build with each other, to come find folks in your community, find fellow activists, organizers, feminists who are trying to be about this work, right? So that's one. 2, please visit the bravewomen.us. We want y'all to take the pledge. Let us know that you're going to take some kind of action. It is also how we will stay in touch with you and let you know about trainings that are coming up, because we will be having trainings regularly. We will also keep you posted on our Brave Women Weekend of Action, which will be the weekend of International Women's Day, March 7th and 8th. So we want y'all to come out. We want y'all to take some action that weekend with us. So please do go to bravewomen.us. Take the pledge, friends. And then the last thing I want to do before we close out is only simply because Rachel invoked Lucille Clifton earlier in the call. And if you are unfamiliar with Lucille Clifton, get very familiar with Lucille Clifton. She's one of my favorite poets, a Black feminist poet. And she has a poem that's one of my favorite. It is called Listen, Children. And it says, listen, children, keep this in the place you have for keeping. Always. Keep it always. We have never hated Black. Listen, we have been ashamed, hopeless, tired, mad, but always we loved us. We have always loved each other. Children, always pass it on. So I want to invite you into a practice of loving each other, loving ourselves, and keeping that in your place for keeping that hope and that love and that desire for a new world, for a free America in your place for keeping. And join us again next time we join us here for a mass call next month. See y'all in the streets. Night, y'all.